Welcome to our channel where we delve into the darkest corners of reality. Tonight we bring you 3 true, terrifying stories that will haunt your dreams. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to be scared. Deep in Louisiana, shrouded in mist and Spanish moss, lies a decaying plantation. The land is stained with the blood and tears of its slaves, their tortured souls forever bound to the decaying timbers and iron. Locals whisper of the plantation's original owner, a cruel man named Jacques Marchand, who delighted in their suffering. It's said that Marchand met a gruesome end, dragged from his bed by his own slaves, his screams swallowed by the humid night. For years, the plantation stood empty, avoided by those who knew its dark history. Then, a young couple, oblivious to the plantation's sinister past, purchased the property, eager to restore it to its former glory. They were filled with hope, their eyes blinded by the fantasy of the plantation's potential. They didn't see the shadows lurking in the corners, didn't feel the icy breath on the back of their necks. From the moment they stepped foot on the property, things felt off. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a sweet, sickly smell that clung to their clothes and hair. They dismissed it as the smell of neglect, the stench of time. The first night, the woman awoke with a start, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a presence in the room, cold and menacing. She turned to her husband, but he slept soundly beside her. As she lay there listening to the creaking of the house, she heard a whisper, soft and low, just at the edge of hearing. It seemed to come from the corner of the room, shrouded in darkness. The next day, they found strange symbols etched into the walls of the attic. Symbols they didn't recognize, symbols that sent shivers down their spines. They tried to ignore them to convince themselves that they were just the work of vandals. But deep down, a seed of fear had been planted. As days turned to weeks, the activity intensified. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without a breeze, and disembodied whispers echoed through the halls. The couple tried to rationalize the events to find logical explanations, but the truth was becoming increasingly difficult to deny. The plantation was haunted. One night the man awoke to the sound of his wife screaming. He rushed to her side, his heart racing. She was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide with terror, pointing to the foot of the bed. There, standing in the darkness, was the silhouette of a man. He was tall and imposing, his features obscured by the shadows. He stared at them with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. The man leaped from the bed, his fear replaced by anger. He lunged at the figure, but it vanished into thin air. The couple huddled together, their bodies trembling, their minds reeling from what they had just witnessed. They couldn't deny it any longer. The plantation was haunted. They tried to flee, but it was too late. The spirits of the plantation had them trapped. The sprawling wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, a place of breathtaking beauty, but also of deep, primal fear. It was here, amidst the towering pines and mist-shrouded trails, that a young woman named Anya vanished without a trace. Anya was an experienced hiker. She knew the trails well, respected the power of the wilderness. She set out on a solo hike one crisp autumn morning, her backpack filled with supplies, her heart filled with the peace that only nature could bring. Hours turned into a day, then 2, and still there was no sign of Anya. Concern turned to panic as search and rescue teams combed the area, their calls echoing unanswered through the silent woods. The woods, once a source of solace for Anya, now held a sinister silence, a silence that whispered of her disappearance. Days turned into weeks, hope dwindling with each passing hour. The search parties, exhausted and disheartened, eventually called off the search, leaving Anya's fate a mystery, lost to the dense undergrowth and the unforgiving wilderness. Months later, a group of hunters stumbled upon a clearing deep in the woods, miles from any known trail. It was there they found it, a small, weathered backpack, half hidden beneath a thicket of thorny blackberry bushes. The backpack belonged to Anya. Panic welled up in their chests as they unzipped the backpack, their hands trembling. Inside, they found Anya's phone, her wallet, her keys, all undisturbed. It was as if she had simply set down her backpack and vanished into thin air. But there was something else in the backpack, a small, spiral-bound notebook. its pages filled with Anya's neat handwriting. They hesitantly opened the notebook, their breath catching in their throats as they read the words scrawled across the pages. Anya's journal entries detailed her hike, her words filled with awe and wonder at the beauty of the forest. But as they read further, the tone of her writing shifted, a sense of unease creeping into her words, a feeling that she was being watched. Anya wrote of strange symbols carved into the trees, symbols that seemed to follow her, symbols she couldn't decipher. She wrote of the feeling of eyes on her back, the sense of being hunted. The hunter's blood ran cold as they realized the truth. Anya hadn't simply gotten lost, something had taken her. The final entry in the notebook was chilling in its brevity. I can see it watching me from the trees, its eyes like burning coals. It's close now. I don't think I can hide. The entry ended abruptly, the rest of the page blank. The hunters looked up from the notebook, their hearts pounding in their chests. They were no longer alone in the clearing. The forest around them seemed to press in, the silence broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. They fled the clearing, Anya's notebook clutched tightly in one of their hands, the image of her final journal entry seared into their minds. In a quaint antique shop nestled on a quiet street, a seemingly innocuous object sat on a dusty shelf. An antique doll, its porcelain face frozen in a perpetual smile. But beneath its delicate features and lace-trimmed dress, a darkness lingered, a malevolent energy that whispered of unspeakable horrors. The doll had been brought to the shop by a nervous man, his hand shaking as he placed it on the counter. He spoke in hushed tones of a string of misfortunes that had plagued his family since the doll had come into their possession. He spoke of illness, accidents, whispers in the night, and a feeling of constant dread that had settled over their home. The shopkeeper, an old woman with eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, listened intently to the man's tale, her gaze never leaving the doll. She could sense the darkness emanating from it, a palpable aura of malice that sent shivers down her spine. The man, desperate to rid himself of the cursed object, practically begged the shopkeeper to take it off his hands. He refused any payment, claiming that he wanted nothing more to do with the doll. The shopkeeper, sensing the genuine fear in his eyes, reluctantly agreed to take the doll, warning him to be careful, that some things are best left undisturbed. The shopkeeper placed the doll on a high shelf, hidden from view, hoping to contain the darkness that clung to it, but it was no use. The doll's presence seemed to seep into the very foundation of the shop, casting a pall over everything it touched. Objects began to move on their own, doors creaking open and slamming shut without a breeze. Customers complained of feeling uneasy, of being watched, of hearing whispers in the aisles. The shopkeeper tried to ignore the strange occurrences, but deep down she knew that the doll was responsible. One night, as the shopkeeper was closing up, she heard a soft giggle coming from the back of the shop. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly made her way towards the sound, her hand trembling as she reached for the light switch. The light flickered on, revealing the antique doll standing in the middle of the aisle, its porcelain face twisted into a grotesque mockery of a smile. The shopkeeper gasped, her blood turning to ice in her veins. The doll's eyes, once blank and lifeless, now glowed with a malevolent light, reflecting a depth of evil that chilled her to her core. The shopkeeper stumbled back, her hand flying to her chest as she struggled to catch her breath. She had never seen anything like it before, the pure, unadulterated evil that radiated from the doll. As she stared at the doll, she heard a voice, soft and low, whispering her name. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, wrapping around her like a shroud. The shopkeeper's mind raced, her body frozen in terror. She knew then that she had made a grave mistake in taking the doll. It was a vessel of something ancient and evil, something that should never have been disturbed. She had to get rid of it, and quickly, before it consumed her and everything around her. The shopkeeper spent the rest of the night trying to find a way to break the doll's hold on her shop. She consulted ancient texts, performed cleansing rituals, but nothing seemed to work. The doll's power was too strong, its grip on her shop too tight. As the first rays of dawn crept through the cracks in the blinds, the shopkeeper knew that she had only one option left. She gathered up the doll, her hands shaking as she wrapped it in layers of cloth, desperate to shield herself from its evil. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these terrifying tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling stories. Remember, the darkness is always listening, waiting for its chance to creep into your world. Share your own scary experiences in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and stay